Hey there! Thank you for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris and welcome to Brick Breakdown. In this show, we will be taking a look at some of the canceled LEGO themes, artwork, sets, and parts, pretty much any idea that LEGO designers had put publicly on the web but never actually came to fruition in the market. Okay, so for today's topic, we have LEGO Atlantis. So Atlantis was released in 2011 as almost a spiritual successor to LEGO Aquazone from the 1998-1997 era, and was focused on minifigures going deep underwater to find the lost city of Atlantis and battle some sea creatures along the way. Atlantis had a predominantly red color scheme. You can kind of see some of the sets right here, and that definitely was not something that was decided in development, because as you're about to see, they experimented with a ton of different colors, models, minifigures, and all sorts of crazy stuff. Now thankfully, back in 2011, Brick Journal, which is a LEGO magazine, did an official spread showcasing many Atlantis prototypes, so there's a ton of stuff to get into today. And as we take a look at these prototypes, there's a ton of fascinating stuff, including some things that may be of interest to people who are fans of Bionicle, with special recolored Bionicle masks that sadly never saw the light of day. Without further ado though, let's dive right into LEGO Atlantis, taking a look at the first prototypes. And as usual, our special guest star for today is LEGO David, hailing all the way from Romania to discuss these LEGO prototypes. Thanks for being here, and let's dive right into these themes. So throughout the Brick Journal magazine, we got a look at different sets in different stages of development, and I kind of want to start off with some of the earliest stages where they were actually considering just reusing the same color scheme from Aqua Raiders, which was the previous LEGO Underwater theme featuring the yellow and black color scheme. You can see the Seabed Scavenger Set. Obviously this is a little bit changed from the final set, but this is the prototype featuring that original color scheme. Now I'm kind of curious, which one do you think is better, the prototype or the actual set that we eventually got?
It's kind of hard to say. There are pros and cons to both of them. I think the tools in the set one are actually better, but I like those kind of flex tube detailing and the harpoons there in the back. I can see this one actually uses the Goras blades.
Honestly, I think I kind of feel the opposite way, at least for the Goras blades right there. I think that those honestly make a bit of a better claw mechanism than the one in the actual set, which honestly doesn't look too realistic to me, but I can totally see what you were saying, and I think the Razor Saw on the actual set was definitely a good choice. I also, again, love the use of the flex tubes and even using those Technic pieces up at the front to give it a more unique front shaping part, and I could go with or without the harpoons on the back, but I do think they do add a bit to the set. Now the one thing I find pretty interesting is the Cockpit Canopy there. I can't quite tell if that's actually supposed to be the same piece as the newer bubble canopy that was introduced for these line of sets in 2010. It looks a little bit more rounded to me, and I don't know, I kind of like the shaping of that better, but I do like what we got as well. The wheels are also pretty interesting because you've got the Power Miner wheels, but some sort of a lime green detailing going through them. Not quite sure how that hooks up because it seems like the flex tube actually goes on the end caps of the wheels, so just kind of interesting all around to see what could have been with a prototype like this. But we can probably move on because there's a ton of stuff to get through, so let's now take a look at our next prototype, the Shadow Snapper. A very interesting build for a prototype that I honestly have no idea how it would have worked as an actual set.
What's really interesting is how they use those kind of minifigure witch hats for the spikes. That's a really interesting piece usage to form this kind of carapace design.
Oh yeah, it's such an interesting technique, and honestly, I'm not nearly as good of a builder to even understand how those all even fit on, but I could imagine that during play, they were probably falling off unless they were somehow adhered really well, so I can see why they chose a different direction. I honestly just wish I could see the inside of this and just see how they mounted those hats on the back, because that is a great parts usage right there.
So originally we were gonna get the Midgard Serpent Head recolored in black, but instead we got the Kina Fiends from Bionicle recolored in black. So it was kind of like a trade-off of the recolored construction piece we got.
So you are the mockest between the two of us. Tell me, which recolor would you have preferred? Do you like what we got with the black Kina spikes, or do you wish we got that black Midgard Serpent Head instead?
That's a hard choice. I think I would have to go with the Kina Fiends in black. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both. I kind of wish we got both, but yeah, it was kind of like a trade. I guess that was what the designers were asked to do, is choose which piece they want to see recolored.
Oh yeah, definitely all the time, and even in modern times, LEGO designers have these parts budgets where they can use to spend it on recolors or new molds or new minifig prints, and I can definitely see that one having been a quandary here to decide which piece to actually recolor. And I do think the black armor piece is a little bit more useful than a serpent head, no matter how cool that black Midgard serpent head is. But with that, let's move on to the next one, the Typhoon Turbo Sub, which was by many means the poster set of the entire Atlantis theme. This one went through a ton of different revisions, and you can see almost 5 different ones just on one magazine spread. So we'll start off with one of the simpler and probably one of the earlier designs that they went through. This one is a much smaller build than what we got, but what do you think of this build and how it compares to the actual Typhoon Turbo Sub we eventually got?
What's that cockpit piece there? Is that the same one we got in Atlantis, or is it a different cockpit piece?
Whoa, those are Fantoka windscreen pieces from Bionicles stacked.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I kind of prefer that one, to be honest.
Yeah, that's such a good parts usage.
Imagine getting that in trans green.
See, I was gonna say I like the set better because I like the engines and everything, but oh man, no, they won me over with that. That would have been great to get in trans screen.
The set version overall is better, but the fact that they used Mari visors is what makes it stand out as a prototype.
Yeah, very, very tantalizing potential recolors that we never got there.
We did get that piece recolored in white, though, in a Mars mission set.
I also feel like it probably was a pain for kids to open the cockpit in this configuration because it's technically 2 pieces. It doesn't even look like there's an easy way to open it.
Yeah.
Alright, but moving on from this very small-scale prototype of the Typhoon Sub, let's now take a look at some of the different color options they were going for. Now, I distinctly remember that this one in particular, the red one with the DPC5 text on the side, is really interesting because it went so far in development that almost all of the official artwork on launch featured this model. So if you go and look at the original LEGO calendars and even some of the LEGO Club magazines, they all have this particular version of the model being shown, which is just so interesting to see a prototype actually get that far and be fully advertised before, for whatever reason, they decided to make some minor changes to get to the final build.
Yeah, I think the red color scheme is easily the best one. Yeah, the set looks like a clear upgrade from that prototype design. There's not much I particularly like about a prototype that the set doesn't have.
One of the most notable things here is that the set actually had a transformation feature, so you could flip the engines around and extend the bullet launcher as well as the claw arm. It doesn't look like any of these prototypes had it, so maybe that was something they actually thought of pretty late in the design phase and thought it would be a cooler feature to implement. Otherwise, they probably would have just went with the red DPC5 one, because again, that one was the one featured heavily in the marketing for the first early initial launch. But what are your thoughts on some of these other ones and some of the other color schemes and builds of these models?
It's interesting how this one is basically the Mars mission color scheme, the fourth one. I can almost see that being thrown in Mars mission and be like a spaceship for Mars mission with a little bit of modifications. Yeah, it's definitely fascinating how all those LEGO original themes from around this era, they were like, you can easily just translate one of those designs into another theme. Like, it doesn't work as a spaceship, you can make it a submarine, or vice versa.
That's a really good point, and we literally saw that in the last video we put out, which was the Power Miners one, where they took a Power Miners prototype and threw it in the Atlantis theme, and honestly, it worked really well. But then we have just one last Typhoon Turbo Sub prototype. This one's again kind of getting a little closer to the final color scheme, but featuring a bit of a different build. What do you think of this one?
I like how they made the ridge design be inward and put the system pieces over it. That's a really unique design that we haven't really seen that much. I kind of want to use that technique in a mock now, to be honest. That is like the most outstanding thing about this one.
Yeah, it's a super interesting technique, and honestly, I can't even really think of a LEGO set that had people snake tubes in and out that wasn't, say, a Bionicle set or even a Technic set that had you kind of snake it through the Technic beams and whatnot. I don't really know if they've ever done that with a system build, and I think it looks really good too, with the ridges on the outside and the tubes snaking through them. I think I also really like this design, but again, it doesn't have that transformation feature in the final set, which suggests that this might be even an earlier stage of prototype than some of the ones that we just discussed previously. Just interesting to see just how much a LEGO set can change and evolve over time. But then moving on from this, we have a prototype for one of the largest flagship Atlantis sets. This is the Neptune Carrier. next to its prototype. Now what do you think of this?
As for the Neptune Carrier, yeah, the set one is better. The prototype one is a lot more smaller, I can see. It's a clear upgrade.
I would agree. Honestly, not too much to say about this one. I think that the set is better in almost every way. What is kind of interesting is seeing them play with different scale. For example, we saw some much larger Typhoon Turbo Subs in the last images we looked at, and now we see a much smaller Neptune Carrier sub, so it's almost like their price points could have switched. Just kind of an interesting thing to look at here and see how the evolution of different models and ideas for models could evolve for different price points. But now let's move on to an assortment of different concepts. We got some stuff for the bases and some alternate color schemes, some underwater towers and whatnot, and even some more different submarines. So a lot of stuff to dive into here and take a look.
What kind of confuses me is how they just made Aqua Raiders in 2007 and just straight after that they came up with another underwater thing that had the exact same color scheme.
Yeah.
But then they changed it. How exactly does that work? LEGO doesn't really do that nowadays.
Yeah, this is honestly probably one of the only examples I can think of where they probably just seemed like they were straight up continuing Aqua Raiders, or resurrecting Aqua Raiders with new sets for 2010, and then they just realized why not just change the color scheme and call it something else. So it's really interesting to me to see how it just started off as just reusing that same exact color scheme, which I guess is kind of traditional for subs and underwater stuff. When you think of submarines, I guess you can kind of think yellow and black, but I, for one, am really glad they decided to take it in a different direction, and the red, black, and transparent green is definitely something that's really unique and truly makes this theme stand out. Otherwise, they should have just called it Aqua Raiders 3 or 4 or something like that.
One of the ones here that stands out to me is the one on wheels. I think that one is kind of a funny design with the straight up using wheels.
Yeah, I kind of like that one too. Almost looks like it has built-in suspension with the way the wheels are mounted there. Certainly would have made for a pretty interesting set, and I think I can clearly see the design evolution go from that to the Seabed Scavenger, which also had a semblance of some sort of a piston articulation and suspension as well. So that's some pretty interesting stuff to see in that color scheme. The thing I really like here is that underwater tower. I think that really could have worked as an actual set, just recolor it red and call it good, but I don't know why they chose not to do it. Maybe they figured it wasn't that engaging of a build, but I think that's a pretty interesting design. The other thing that I actually really like about this prototype here is that you can see this sort of underwater spaceship or almost Slave 1-esque design with a large windscreen up at the front. I think that probably could have worked in even LEGO Space or Space Police 3. It's honestly pretty strikingly similar to a Space Police 3 prototype we got. So both of the vertical featured subs here are honestly really interesting. And I kind of wish we got these as actual sets, just to see how they would put together and how to play around with them.
Yeah, the first one looks pretty standard, though. Is that a new modification of the competition cannon?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It almost kind of looks like a Bionicle part or something like that.
Yeah, otherwise it looks quite standard. The second one actually looks a lot more unique with the elongated front, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. Not really sure exactly how I feel about this one, but I am happier with the final sets that we got. I think this one's just okay, but clearly it's something that's very much in the experimental phase. But with that, we can move on to the final set prototype we have a picture of. Now, to me personally, this is easily the most interesting one of them all. And you've probably spotted it by now, but do you see those black Krika heads?
What? Okay, LEGO. If those pieces exist somewhere, I need them. I need them now.
And that's not all, because we also have a pearl gold Nokama Trident.
Yeah, why didn't they? I know they used that in Aqua Raiders, but not in Atlantis.
If you look closely at those minifigure guards in the center, they have these very cool underwater aquatic armor and headpieces, even an aquatic shield piece, and that Trident mold is even different from what we got. So this has a ton of fascinating stuff packed in.
I will say though the color choice for the one in the actual set is a lot more interesting. They use this kind of like speckled kind of golden color, which is only actually came in this set only and nothing else.
Yeah, the color used in the final set is actually really reminiscent of some of the Knight's Kingdom buildable figure pieces with that kind of speckled armor and metal color, but I do think it's a good thing to get that in this set. That being said, the more amphibian choices for the prototype are also really interesting. And of course, I just wish we got both, although I know that would not have been possible because they of course had to just create probably just 2 new molds and colors for this set. not to mention those fantastic builds for these sharks on the side, which honestly completely blow away the ones we got in the actual set, but definitely would have cost a lot more too.
Yeah, they're better than the ones in the actual set, but they're still nice as statues, I guess, in the actual set.
Now, speaking of comparing the two sets, what do you think of the newer portal mechanism as opposed to the prototype portal mechanism?
When it comes to the portal, I think the set is better because it has a really cool function where you can plug all the keys and then open up the portal.
Oh yeah, 100% agreed. The mechanism in the set is really cool. It was so good they even reused it for a LEGO Elves set, and I think that's probably one of the only things that I think drastically improved from the prototype to this version. Although the large shark head at the front that actually opens its jaws as you walk in was a pretty cool upgrade and addition. But everything else, I think the prototype just did a lot better, to be honest.
This is one of the instances where the prototype is better than the actual set, except one thing the set does better than the prototype. So yeah, my suggestion would have been take the portal from the set and use that on the prototype and then call it a day. Because yeah, the Krika heads in black, the Nokama staff pieces, and then the skeleton sharks, those are all fantastic.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. But with that, we've actually taken a look at all of the set prototypes for Atlantis, a ton of really fascinating new designs and different recolors and even some alternate color schemes. And finally, we can wrap up this video by taking a look at some of the prototype underwater creature minifigures. We get 3 different prototypes of these, plus a prototype version of the actual treasures and keystones, which, if you look closely at them, also got so far into production that you can actually see these designs on many of the official promotional material when the theme was first announced. So again, I do think that this was actually something that carried on throughout many of the prototypes, although I am happy they eventually changed it from having just generic symbols to actually featuring the animals of the undersea creatures themselves. But what do you think of these first initial minifigure prototypes here?
So the first one we actually got the shark dude, but the second one is really interesting to me because of that head mold. Kind of reminds me of Davy Jones, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I'm totally getting the Cthulhu or Lovecraftian vibe from these, a very different vibe than what we actually got in the final sets, but I think I do prefer the more varied and unique designs that we got, featuring different color schemes and different animals, but this is a very interesting look at what could have been for the Atlantis theme. Now, some of these are a little too cartoonish to me personally, like the one on the far right there I think is just a little too goofy, but the middle two are really interesting, and I feel like they could actually work, as you said, for maybe a fantasy pirates theme or something like that.
The two in the middle actually look really cool. Yeah, but the second one, I really love that. I wish we got that mold. Just in of itself, that mold looks fantastic.
Definitely agreed with you there. But with that, I think we've about summed up all of the different LEGO Atlantis prototypes. From the sets to the minifigures and even concept art, there was a ton of fascinating stuff we looked at today, and thank you for coming on again, LEGO David. Alright, and that wraps up this episode of Brick Breakdown. Let me know down in the comments below, did you like these prototypes, and do you wish we actually got some of these over the actual sets themselves? I hope you enjoyed this video, and definitely stay tuned to Duckbricks for even more LEGO Brick Breakdown videos on prototypes, as well as more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.